Hey guys, this is Chris.
My name is Reese.
And I'm Sierra.
And today we're going to be presenting some bid rigging schemes to you guys.
So this is the general overview of our presentation. We're first going to start with what financial fraud is, and then we're going to move into what exactly bid rigging is, and then we split bid rigging up into the three phases, and finally we're going to go over the Buffalo Billion, which is an example of a bid rigging scheme in the US.
So what is fraud? There are four specific things that need to happen for an event to be considered fraudulent. So the first one is there's a material misstatement on a financial statement or a different document. The second is there was knowledge that this statement was false. That means somebody went in with intent and filled in these false statements. The third is there was reliance on these false statements by a victim. And the fourth is the victim suffered damages from their reliance on the false statements.
So kind of just to continue that general discussion of fraud, you can really break fraud down into this fraud tree into three major categories. So there's corruption, asset misappropriation, and at the end there's financial statement fraud. And as you'll see, we're going to discuss a little more corruption with bid rigging.
So as Chris just said, bid rigging is actually a fraud scheme, but it's broken down under the corruption category and more deeply defined as bribery. Bribery is the offering, giving, receiving, or soliciting of any item of value to influence actions of an official.
So along those lines of bribery, the bribery happens in the competitive bidding process. So in a competitive bidding process, all bidders are placed on the legally same plane of equality. So every bidder has the same opportunity to get chosen for the bid. And bid rigging schemes intend to rig the process by leveraging some sort of inside influence. This inside influence is an employee, or it could be multiple employees that are corrupt, and they have some sort of sway in the bidding process or the selection process.
So with this being a case of bribery or a type of bribery, there has to be something of value in return. That's what the person who's doing the bribing will offer the person who they want the action to be committed by in return. So in this case, it's often money, right? That's the top bribe in any situation. But there's also these consulting fees or referral commissions, which are usually just that in name. They're usually fictitious and just another way to hide giving money to somebody. There could be future employment promises. So you do this for me, I'll give you a job. Part ownership of the company, luxury meals, liquor, free travel, property, all these sorts of things that you would normally expect that to be a reward for a type of behavior that you would want to see or an action that you would want.
So bid rigging schemes are categorized based on inside influence. These can be split up into three phases: the pre-solicitation phase, the solicitation phase, and the submission phase that we're going to talk about in the next slides.
So the pre-solicitation phase schemes happen before the bid actually takes place. So these kinds of schemes happen before any companies submit their bids for the jobs. And there are two different categories within pre-solicitation schemes. So there are need recognition schemes, which we're about to talk about. And the second is specification schemes, which we're also going to go into.
So these need recognition schemes, as Reese was talking about, this is going to be the process in which an employee of a company convinces their company that they need something or need to take part in a project. It'll be good for them. So like in the case of bid rigging, we want to be part of this project. It'll be good for us in the future, when they really don't need to. And often that person trying to do that convincing is promised that something of value is bribed that something of value in return to do this. And with the result, the company's going to be purchasing things they don't need or providing services they don't need, at basically the will of a corrupt employee who convinced them that, hey, this is something we should do.
So specification themes are fraudulent tailoring of bid specifications to a particular bidder. Pre-qualification procedures are under this. It's basically when an outside vendor that is a bidder would use inside influence to influence the writing of qualifications to make it so their company meets the exact requirements. In addition, it could be like non-competitive procurement justifications or deliberate writing of vague specifications bid splitting, or the ability to specifications earlier than competitors.
So solicitation phase schemes are the second type of phase schemes. And this is going to occur when the bid is actually sent out to the public, and the fraudster or the fraudulent bidding company is going to try to restrict the pool of bidders to make them look more attractive to be selected for the bid. So the most popular kind of way this happens is bid pooling. And we have a little video after the slide to show you what bid pooling actually is. They could use fictitious suppliers. So they might create these fake bidders to make their own actual bid look better. They could restrict the time for submitting bids. So if the bid is only out there for a couple days, that restricts the pool of people that can actually submit the bids. Or they could put bids in obscure publications. So if they decided to put a bid offer out in a newspaper, not a lot of companies are going to see that, as opposed to just a direct email to qualified bidders.
So here's that video on bid pooling that Reese was talking about. We're just going to play it quick. It'll give a good summary on just bid pooling in general and the things that go into it.
A community wants to assign a contract for building a school and publishes a tender. Franz is looking for exactly this type of tender to bid on. This is because Franz is a building contractor and he really wants this contract. In order to ensure that Franz gets the job, he contacts 5 of his competitors and asks them to submit competing bids with very high prices. In return, Franz is willing to submit bids with very high prices for other tenders. What Franz is doing is illegal, and he will be in trouble if caught, because Franz and his competitors are coordinating their prices. This allows Franz to ask for more money for building the school while still submitting the best bid. The client and the taxpayers have no idea and are forced to pay more.
So going to the submission phase schemes, this is when fraudsters attack the submission and reviewing of bids. This can happen in 2 ways: the interviewing of the sealed bidding process and the use of inside information on how to prepare their bid in the review board's favor.
So over the next 2 slides, we're going to talk about red flags that you can see throughout the specific bid rigging scheme phases to help you better prevent and deter bid rigging in the future. So a couple of them here that we just want to highlight. You could have unusually high requirements at the inventory level. So if a company does have this, that might indicate a need recognition scheme going on. If a bid is put out where only one certain supplier or bidder has the ability to fulfill the need, then that could also be a red flag with specification schemes.
Just continue on with a few more red flags. Some of the ones on this slide that I want to highlight, starting with a lower number of submissions than expected. If you have a bid that you're putting out there in any situation, and in general, there's not as many bids as you expect to come in, it's a project that you think people would be really excited for, want to be a part of, and that turnout just isn't there, that should already be a red flag that there's something suspicious going on. There might be issues with how the bid is set up, how long it's out there, as we'll talk about later, and a few other things. So it's just generally a red flag that can kind of signal some sort of fraudulent activity. Moving down the list a little bit, the same bidder always winning is pretty good sign that there's a issue of fraud here. I mean, if the same person's winning every time over and over again, it's pretty clear that they're probably involved in some sort of fraudulent activity, involved in the bid. In this case, we're talking about bid rigging, so maybe they have inside information, maybe it was tailored to them, whatever that might be. And then the same thing if there's a trend of bid winners, like a group of people that always win, the same kind of situation going on here.
To go along with the red flags Chris and Reese talked about, these are some of the major red flags that we use for prevention and detection methods to just be aware of and keep an eye out for. So you want to monitor price trends, change orders or amendments, very large unexplained price differences among bidders, and patterns within the bidding process, such as the last bidder always winning, somebody repeatedly always winning, or a predictable rotation of bid winners. Also, losing bidders appear as subcontractors, bid from fake suppliers, qualified bidders fail to submit contract proposals, and split projects that are usually large into smaller jobs.
So here's an example of a very famous bid rigging scheme that happened in upstate New York. This is a pretty special bid rigging example because it has different rigging phases, different rigging schemes through every phase that we just talked about.
Will it tarnish Governor Cuomo's legacy or become his version of Bridgegate? The so-called Buffalo Billion project is now at the center of a corruption investigation. CBS 2's Tony Aiello joins us now with more on the controversial project. Tony.
Maurice, Governor Cuomo sees the Buffalo Billion as a key part of his legacy. Supporters say it will create jobs and transform the economy in upstate and western New York. But critics say the state is spending billions of dollars with insufficient oversight. Now the U.S. Attorney is taking a close look.
Thank you.
Governor Cuomo spending lots of time in and around Buffalo and even more of the state's money. The so-called Buffalo Billion, tax dollars funding a solar panel plant and other facilities for high-tech firms. Much of it, the vision of the highest paid state employee, the president of SUNY Polytechnic.
Dr. Elaine Calleros, who sees things that mere mortals don't see and has economic visions that other mere mortals can't actually see.
It's not clear if Calleros saw subpoenas coming, but he and the Buffalo Billion Project got them as the U.S. Attorney probes possible corruption with these big projects.
The corruption risk is sky high. There's so many red flags for corruption here.
John Caney of the watchdog group Reinvent Albany sees big issues with the Buffalo Billion. Cuomo allowed Calleros to set up not-for-profits to accept and then spend state money on the projects.
They have very, very little oversight, and it's an opportunity to just essentially do whatever you want to with state tax dollars.
Caney says the same players keep landing fat contracts to work on Buffalo Billion. Firms such as Core Development and CHA Consulting that have donated generously to Governor Cuomo and also paid fees to Cuomo associates Joe Percoco and Todd Howe.
All the smoke around this is about learning whether there's a fire that is basically bribery and corruption.
As the feds probe the Buffalo Billion, Calleros has resigned from the not-for-profits controlling the projects, and the governor has put his own respected watchdog in place to make sure tax dollars are being spent appropriately. SUNY Poly says Calleros' resignation from those boards was unrelated to the investigation and insists there are multiple layers of oversight to make sure Buffalo Billion money is properly spent. Governor Cuomo promises full cooperation in the probe, but believes any wrongdoing is isolated to one or two bad apples and is not widespread. Christine, Maurice.
We'll continue to follow the money, Tony. Thank you.
Thanks. So that was just a quick video. We're about to summarize it on the next slide.
Oh, just with a few things that the video covered on, but points that we feel like we should highlight some more. So with LP Simonelli and Core Developments, those are your two big contractors that were involved in this scheme with the Buffalo Billion. So they were the ones that were eventually awarded the project. Steve Aiello, Todd Howe, and Elaine Calleros, that's that inside influence that we kept bringing up and talking about. They were the ones that basically got these companies those projects by giving contributions to Cuomo's campaign and paying off others to basically get them to be like, hey, these are the guys we want because they're bribing us, essentially. So with the pre-solicitation phase of this specific scheme, we talk about specification schemes. So that's where you're tailoring, like we said, those bids to fit a particular client or company. So in this case, that was going on. A good example from that is they wanted 50 years of experience in like contracting development, which is, if you think about it, it's kind of ridiculous how many companies in an area are really going to be able to feasibly fit into that specification that's required for this bid. So already you can kind of see where there was issues before the bid even came out. So with the solicitation phase, when the bid was going on, there was an issue with the bid window only really being available for a week. So if companies even did want to be part of it, it was going to be very difficult for them to figure that out, right? They only had a certain window that they would be able to know about it, be a part of it. And with these companies probably being informed ahead of time and giving specifications to them, there's a lot of issues there. Like it's pretty obvious what's going on here. And then there's the submission schemes where when the bid is actually being prepared, there's influence described to certain bidders, certain companies on how to prepare your bid to best fit what we're asking for. And that essentially was going on here again with these two companies.
So going off what Chris just said, there was a huge Buffalo Billion fallout. They lost approximately $1.5 billion of taxpayer money that was basically wasted. The Buffalo Billion at first promised job creation that never fully came to be, in which they underperformed heavily. Jail time was sentenced to both main contributors in each company. Many still await verdicts. And in addition, it created a distrust between citizens and government in general, and the region is still recovering.
All right, so after that whole video, we basically ran through bid rigging schemes and what it actually was. We hope you guys learned a lot. If you have any questions, you can comment below or you can email us at either of our 3 emails over here, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks for watching.